Welcome back. I would say that today is not a tripod kind of day because I want to tell you guys about one of my favorite pieces of equipment. Now, I've always been a fan of equipment. I love stuff that just kind of sounds off, right? It kind of sounds like it's got its own funk, its own character. And that's why one of my favorite things to use musically is this Silvertone guitar right here from the 1960s. Much more high-powered camera. When you're shooting with this, overlapping frequency ranges. Now, what you see behind it over here is the case that it came in all the way back then, and that case has an amp in it. It was before like the modern electricity standards, so plugging it in the wrong way will get you shocked. I have touched like mic cables when I was like breaking this thing down, just like so it can be pretty dangerous. Now, this guitar has been used by some of my absolute heroes like Dex Romweber of the Flat Duo Jets, who was idolized by Jack White. And the reason that Jack White and the White Stripes exist is largely due to the fact that the Flat Duo Jets existed. Here's a video of Dex Romweber tearing it up as a 20-something. I actually had the chance to meet him down here at Will's Pub in Orlando, and this awesome band in town, the Woolly Bushmen, is like good friends with him. He is one of my tremendous heroes and a large reason why I actually got this guitar. Now, in order to understand what makes Silvertone guitars so special, you got to understand Danelectro. Danelectro was started by Nathaniel Nat Daniel. Nat was born in New York City to immigrant parents. Very smart. He skipped several grades and graduated high school early, and then he dropped out of college to start making and selling amplifiers. In the 1930s, Nat Daniel started gaining renown for making the flattest amps around, so you would get equal frequency response across the entire frequency range in what he called the push-pull amplifier circuit. So Nat Daniel started a amplifier manufacturing ring in his bedroom at his parents' house, and his first customer was Epiphone. Then Daniel spent some time working as a civilian designer for the US military during World War II. After his work for the US Army, he started Danelectro, and his first big contracts were Sears Roebuck and Montgomery Ward. So for Sears Roebuck, Danelectro spun off Silvertone, which is these guitars. Daniel really kind of made his mark by making quality guitars that were still affordable. He really wanted to drive down the cost of this Silvertone line. So when you're working with Sears, what is the cheapest thing you can make your guitars out of? Well, it's probably stuff that Sears has already got in its manufacturing line. And that's why the Silvertone line features the very first lipstick pickup. This is an actual lipstick tube from Sears factory with some magnets inside of it, which gives this guitar its sort of jangly sound. Daniel and by extension Danelectro are like major innovators in the electric guitar and amplifier space. Daniel patented the first tremolo, which he called Vibravox, I believe. He patented the first reverb systems for an amplifier, and he patented an electric organ that was really kind of like a predecessor to modern digital synthesizers. Except Danelectro's electric organs sort of mimicked real instruments with analog signals, which is crazy. He also made the first 6-string electric bass, which is pretty badass, the first 12-string electric guitar, which he called the Belzuki. He also created the first master-slave amp system and the first amp-in-case guitar, which is the Silvertone 1448. Now, originally, Danelectro came out with the 1448 and the 1449, which was a 2-pickup guitar, and it had a bit of a souped-up amp in the case. It also had a longer neck, so more frets. So this is kind of like the real deal kiddo version of the Silvertone guitar. This was like, I'm gonna buy my kid his first guitar kind of shit. Just kind of goes to show you that like back then they thought they were making crappy equipment, and come to today and a lot of that equipment is fetishized. Mics from that era that were thought of as like subpar. They really had no idea that in this switch to mostly digital, people were gonna yearn for that analog kind of sound. Now for the Silvertone guitars, Danelectro wanted to make a neck that would never bend. Most necks at the time had these adjustable rods in them, and Danelectro thought that that was like a band-aid, like it wasn't good enough. So what he did was he took poplar and he aged it in a drying room so that it would get its maximum warp before they ever actually made the neck with it. Then Danelectro took the lightest, cheapest steel beams that he could find, these steel I-beams, and put 2 of them in the neck right through the poplar. This also had some benefits for sound. The way that electrical interference worked, the neck is wired in series. This was something that no other guitar manufacturers at the time were doing, and it produced a different kind of sound. Jimi Hendrix learned on a Silvertone guitar. Chet Atkins' first guitar was a Silvertone. And like I said, Dex Romweber of the Flat Duo Jets popularized the out of this guitar. Cat Power actually bought a Silvertone for her first guitar because, like me, she had a crush on Dex Romweber. And Elvis Costello used a Silvertone on a majority of his album When I Was Cruel. Muddy Waters played a secondhand Stella guitar when he started out that was purchased from a Sears catalog 100%. So there's been this long history of like cheap Sears catalog equipment and great musicians. So let's turn this thing on and see how it sounds. Now, just to be clear, I am miking this thing with the RE320 and it's coming through the Audient ID14 right here. If you want to win one of these, we have a contest ongoing right now. I'll put a link right here so that you can enter and maybe win one. Ooh, it sounds wicked. Wonder what's got the matter. Time, you know it time, and it seems like the hours. Everything unchanged. I hold up my head. I'm just trying to make you understand. Telling the junior, somebody who do me. Come on, baby. I think this thing lends itself really well to blues music. Obviously, I'm predisposed to say that because of Dex Romweber and the Flat Duo Jets, who like created this like goth punk blues kind of aesthetic, but it really does sound great with blues. I don't know what to say here. It really does. This thing just kind of has like this evil sound. I don't know how to describe it, but like it just sounds evil. And if you play around with the amplifier a little bit, play around with the tonality knobs here, you can get some really wicked sounds. Like I said, this thing is before electricity standards, modern electricity standards. So like the amp is sketchy. There's like a death cap on it. And if you search the internet, you'll find like tons of discussion about how to rewire this thing, which is notoriously difficult. And why would you? I mean, I think it gets its gnarly sound from the fact that it just might kill you. This thing was purchased in 1963 or 64. The neck is beautifully straight to this day, 60 years later. Freaking amazing, dude. I'd say if you're gonna purchase one of these things, be a bluesman or blueswoman. Well, I've been so lonely, and you've been fine. They said I'ma make good soon when it's my time. You'll have nobody to keep you warm when that last train home sounds a horn. When it's blowing high, howling a woo. Yeah, I just love this guitar. What can I say? Let me turn off this amplifier before it explodes. So yeah, I think that like normally when it comes to buying vintage fetishist equipment, you got to be super careful with it because it's very old, and if you touch it the wrong way, it might just poof, disappear. That's really not the case with these Danelectro Silvertone guitars. They are amazing. They hold up 50, 60 years after they were made. I can beat the hell out of this thing, and that's what I do to equipment. Like this camera, its days are numbered. That's just how I am. I'm not a very orderly kind of guy. But I don't have to be with this badass piece of blues machinery here. And as a bluesman, I'm gonna be rough and tumble, right? It's gonna get a little bit dinged up. It's gonna, it's gonna go through some rough periods. And that's okay because because the build quality is second to none. The amp in the case, I don't know, maybe that falls apart. But I will say this about the amp in the case is that I've accidentally left this thing on for almost a full day, and when I got back it was fine. Just shut it off and it really doesn't sound any different than it did before, which is like it came from the gutters of hell. So I'm very happy with this purchasing decision. Even though I paid 14 times what it was worth when it first came out, that's what you're gonna pay these days, because the aftermarket on this thing, like I said, is insane. People fetishize this guitar. There's a reason that so many famous rock musicians have used one. If you want the guitar that Jimi Hendrix learned on, you pay a premium, right? So that's just my opinion on these Danelectros, man. If you can get yourself a Silvertone guitar and you play a style of music that's conducive to it, or you feel like you could work its sound into your style, do it, man. If you have the means, do it. I can't recommend it enough. Now, there are plenty of drawbacks to using something like this, I will say. If you're like one of those funk guitarists who wants to like slide up the neck, I can't really get much clearance on the neck here. So if you want to play those 3-note chords and just slide all the way around, like the 1448's not going to do it for you. The 1449, however, or as it was rebranded, the 1457, with the 2 pickups and the longer neck, that will do it for you. It also has a better amp in the case. What I don't like about the 1449 or the 1457 is that it's not as dirty as this thing. Like, this thing is a bloody dagger. The 1449 is a little bit more polished. I mean, compared to like a brand new Gibson Les Paul or Fender Strat, like obviously it's not very polished, but in comparison to this thing, it is more polished, and I wanted this. I wanted black and white with glittery speckles that you'd find on the inside of a nudie booth. I wanted this beautiful bathroom lining. The 1449 has got this like cherry red sunburst on it. It just looks a little bit less shitty, and that's why I chose to go with this thing. Now, if you want to hunt down one of these things, good luck. You got to be careful with the aftermarket. A lot of people have done work on the amp. A lot of people have kind of done something to the guitar. Maybe they refinished it. All of that's going to bring down the resale value. The more original to the day it came out you can get, probably the better in terms of if you ever want to resell it. And you're losing out on that sweet 1960s juice, right? If you got a 1980s finish on it, ugh, who wants that? Call me crazy, but I kind of like that this thing could kill me if I plug it in wrong. It just makes it adds to the mystique. It adds to the story. It makes it that much more badass. So your mileage may vary, but when you're going to buy one of these on the aftermarket, check eBay, check Reverb. I got this one on Reverb, and I made sure that I spoke with the owner and that it was all original parts and all that. So if you're like me and this would suit your needs for the exact same reason, dude, get it. I'm not the kind of guy to like fetishize about all these different pedals and a real Fender Strat or whatever. Like, I don't care. I'd rather have something that has its own character that I don't have to modify and I can just pick up and be wicked with any old time of day. It's kind of how I approach my voice too. Like, I learned by singing to old doo-wop records as best I could. I don't know all the vocal techniques. I like that it's just out the box, got its own built-in character. I don't have to throw a pedal on it. And remiking the amp in case has its own wicked sound. Like, yeah, I could feed this thing through another amp, but I'd rather power this amp because I want that dirty, dirty, dirty sound. So big ups to Danelectro from 60 years in the future. Thank you so much for making this beautiful biatch right here. It truly is my favorite guitar and will probably remain so for a long, long time. Have any of your favorite musicians used a Silvertone? Mick Jagger, Jimi Hendrix, Chet Atkins, Cat Power, Elvis Costello, Jack White, Dex Romweber of the Flat Duo Jets? Or do you wholeheartedly disagree with my assessment of this piece of equipment? Whatever your opinion on this thing, sound off in the comments. I'd love to talk about it. I just love learning about this stuff. It's so cool. With that said, I've been Circa for Full Stack Creative. This has been a review of the Silvertone 1448 and the Silvertone line in general. If you like this video, like the damn video. Subscribe if you'd like to get tutorials on music marketing, gear reviews, and just all around badassery 3 times a week. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, Indies.